2 minutes and 44 seconds past 7 in the evening. A Scottish air traffic controller looks at his screen and calls Pan Am Flight 103 to clear it across the Atlantic. No one answers. On his radar, the green dot representing a Boeing 747 with 259 people on board breaks into 5 echoes. Then more. Then the screen fills with dots falling like snow. Below, in a town of 4,000 people getting ready for Christmas, the sky begins to burn. What fell on Lockerbie that night was not an accident. It was the murder of 270 people, and solving it demanded something almost impossible. Finding, across 845 square miles of wreckage, a fragment of circuit board smaller than a fingernail. That fragment pointed to a country, to a dictator, and to one man. But almost 4 decades later, the case is still open. And to understand why, we first have to board that plane. The 21st of December, 1988, 4 days before Christmas. At London's Heathrow Airport, a Boeing 747 with 20 years of service waits on the tarmac. Its name is Clipper Maid of the Seas. It belongs to Pan Am, the airline that for decades was the symbol of American power in the air. On board are 243 passengers and 16 crew. Most of them are going home for Christmas. There are citizens of 21 countries, but above all, Americans, 190 of them. Among them, 35 students from Syracuse University, returning from their semester in Europe. Kids of 20 with suitcases full of presents. At 25 past 6 in the evening, the plane takes off for New York. In command is Captain James McQuarrie, a veteran with almost 11,000 flight hours. The route is pure routine. Climb, cross Scotland, head out over the ocean. At 6:58, the first officer contacts Oceanic Control and requests clearance to cross the Atlantic. It is the last message that will ever leave that plane. Because in the forward cargo hold, inside a copper-colored Samsonite suitcase, there is a Toshiba radio cassette player. And inside the radio, less than half a kilo of Semtex plastic explosive, wired to a timer. At 2 minutes past 7 in the evening, 38 minutes after takeoff, the timer runs out. The explosion tears a hole in the left side of the fuselage. At 31,000 feet, with the air rushing past at hundreds of kilometers an hour, that wound is fatal. The plane breaks apart in the sky in a matter of seconds. The cockpit rips away with the entire nose. There is no mayday. There is no time. The dot on the radar becomes a rain of echoes, and everything that was once a plane begins to fall on the town below. Lockerbie is a market town in the south of Scotland. That evening it was raining, it was cold, and the houses smelled of dinner. A 14-year-old boy, Stephen Flanagan, had just slipped out to a neighbour's house to secretly assemble the bicycle his little sister was getting for Christmas. That errand saved his life. When he looked back, his street no longer existed. The wings of the plane, loaded with around 100 tons of fuel, came down on the neighborhood of Sherwood Crescent. The impact dug a crater more than 45 meters long and threw 1,500 tons of earth and debris into the air. The explosion registered a magnitude of 1.6 on seismographs, like a small earthquake. Stephen's parents and his sister died in their home. So did other neighbors, 11 people from the town in all, including an entire family of 4, the Somervilles, who lived at number 15. A 19-year-old firefighter who drove in from the next town said that as he crested a hill several kilometers away, he could already see the glow. A police inspector who reached Sherwood Crescent described it as a roar. Flames pouring out of an enormous hole in the ground, thick smoke, a terrible heat. One neighbor said it looked like the pictures of the bomb at Hiroshima. 5 kilometers from the town, beside the small church of Tundergarth, the nose of the plane came down in a field. The cockpit, with the pilots inside, lay on the grass like a broken toy. That photograph, the nose of the Clipper Maid of the Seas, fallen beside a country church, went around the world. and became the emblem of the tragedy. In all, 270 people died, the 259 on the plane and 11 on the ground. Until the 11th of September 2001, it was the deadliest attack ever committed against American civilians. And it remains, to this day, the deadliest terrorist attack in British history. That very night, while neighbors searched for survivors who did not exist, another story began. Because very soon, someone asked the inevitable question. A plane does not simply break apart in the sky. What had happened up there? The wreckage of Flight 103 fell across a strip of 845 square miles from Scotland to the coast of England. Never before had a criminal investigation faced a scene so vast. More than 5,000 people, police, soldiers and volunteers, combed fields, woods and hills for weeks. They walked in lines, eyes on the ground, picking up every screw, every piece of clothing, every half-written letter. They recovered 319 tons of debris. And in the middle of that horror, something happened that would define Lockerbie forever. The women of the town washed, ironed, and folded the victims' clothes by hand before returning them to the families. Neighbors baked cakes and scones for the soldiers doing the hardest work. Years later, the FBI would acknowledge that its own victim support service was inspired by the compassion of that Scottish town. Meanwhile, the technicians were looking for the cause, and they found it fast. On fragments of the metal luggage container from the forward hold, unmistakable signs appeared. Metal bent outward, pitting, chemical residue. Analysis confirmed traces of Semtex, a plastic explosive made in Czechoslovakia, almost undetectable with the technology of the time. Among the debris, they also found tiny fragments of a Toshiba radio cassette player and of a hard-shell Samsonite suitcase, copper in color. The official conclusion came within weeks. A bomb, hidden in a radio, inside a suitcase, in luggage container AVE 4041. This was no longer a plane crash. It was the biggest mass murder in the history of Scotland. But knowing how was not knowing who. And when the investigators began to pull on that thread, they discovered something uncomfortable. Deeply uncomfortable. People had been warning for months that this was going to happen. 2 months before the attack, in October of 1988, German police launched an operation called Autumn Leaves. They raided the apartments and cars of a cell of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, General Command, a terrorist group based in Syria. In the city of Neuss, near Frankfurt, they found a table covered in wires and soldering irons, and they found a bomb. It was hidden inside a Toshiba radio cassette player with a barometric detonator, a mechanism triggered by the change in pressure as a plane gains altitude. A bomb designed specifically to bring down an aircraft. Urgent alerts went out about explosives hidden in Toshiba radios. But several members of the cell were released for lack of evidence, and the warning dissolved into bureaucracy. There was more. On the 5th of December, 16 days before the attack, a man made an anonymous call to the United States Embassy in Helsinki. He said that within the next 2 weeks, someone would try to place a bomb on a Pan Am flight from Frankfurt to New York, hidden in the luggage of a passenger who would not know what he was carrying. The warning was circulated to embassies and airlines. It was pinned to notice boards at the American embassy in Moscow, where many people read it. Some officials, it was said afterwards, changed their tickets. The passengers of Flight 103 never knew a thing. The official investigation later concluded that the Helsinki call was a false alarm, with no real connection to the bombing. That may be true. But for the victims' families, the sum of it all was unbearable. A terrorist cell with bombs in radio cassette players arrested half an hour from Frankfurt. A warning about a Pan Am flight out of Frankfurt. And a Pan Am plane coming from Frankfurt, blown out of the sky by a radio cassette bomb. Because there is one detail we have not mentioned yet. Flight 103 actually began in Frankfurt. A smaller plane flew the first leg to London, where passengers and luggage were transferred to the 747. If the bomb came from Frankfurt, everything fit with the Popular Front. And behind the Popular Front, investigators saw a larger shadow: Iran. 5 months earlier, in July of '88, an American warship, the Vincennes, had mistakenly shot down a civilian Iranian Airbus over the Persian Gulf. 290 people died. Tehran promised that the skies would rain blood. The initial theory of almost every intelligence service was exactly that. Iran ordered the revenge, and the Popular Front carried it out. For almost 2 years, that was the main lead. Until a piece of burnt cloth found in a forest changed the course of the entire investigation. Months after the attack, among the thousands of objects collected from the fields, technicians examined the charred collar of a grey shirt. It had been so close to the explosion that fragments of the bomb itself were embedded in the fabric. And inside that collar, they found something minuscule, a piece of green circuit board the size of a thumbnail. The investigators photographed it, catalogued it, and spent months showing that image around half the world, until someone recognized it. The fragment matched a timer, model MST-13, made by a small Swiss company called Mebo. And when the agents knocked on Mebo's door, the answer changed everything. The company had sold a batch of those timers to one very specific client, the Libyan intelligence services. That did not fit with Iran or with the Popular Front. It fit with Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, the Libyan dictator locked in an open Cold War with the United States for years. In 1986, American jets had bombed Tripoli and Benghazi in retaliation for an attack in Berlin. One of those bombs killed an adopted daughter of Gaddafi. Libya, too, had a score to settle. And there was a second thread, sewn, quite literally, into the same clothes. The garments packed around the bomb still carried labels from Malta. The detectives flew to Malta and went shop by shop until they reached a small store in Slima called Mary's House. Its owner, Tony Gauci, remembered something extraordinary. Weeks before the attack, a customer with a Libyan accent had bought a random pile of clothes without checking sizes or prices. Shirts, trousers, a pair of pajamas, a blue baby romper. And he remembered one more detail. As the man was leaving, it started to rain, and Gauci sold him an umbrella too. The detectives bought an identical umbrella, flew back to Scotland, and dug through every black umbrella recovered from the disaster. They found one that matched. Embedded in its fabric were fibers from the blue baby romper. The umbrella had traveled inside the bomb suitcase. The man from the shop in Malta was the man they were looking for. All that was missing was a face. And here, a most unlikely device entered the story. A computer printer in Frankfurt. A programmer at the airport, Bogomira Erak, had saved, on her own initiative, a printout of the luggage transferred to the connecting flight on the day of the attack. That piece of paper, kept almost by chance, showed one bag arriving on an Air Malta flight and being transferred to the Pan Am plane. A suitcase that, according to the prosecution, belonged to no passenger on board. In November of 1991, the United States and the United Kingdom announced the charges. 2 Libyans, employees of Libyan Arab Airlines in Malta, and alleged intelligence agents, Abdelbasset al-Megrahi and Lamin Khalifa Fima. The prosecution claimed they had built the bomb with Semtex, hidden it in the Toshiba, packed it in the Samsonite, and slipped it, unaccompanied, onto the Air Malta flight to Frankfurt. From there, the luggage system did the rest. Frankfurt, London, the forward hold of the clipper made of the seas. 270 counts of murder. There was just one problem. The accused were in Libya, and Gaddafi had no intention of handing them over. The United Nations imposed sanctions on Libya in 1992. An air embargo, an arms embargo, isolation. Gaddafi held out for 7 years while the country slowly suffocated. In the end, a solution without precedent in judicial history was reached. The 2 accused would be tried by Scottish judges under Scottish law, but on neutral ground. A former American airbase in the Netherlands, Camp Zeist, was temporarily declared Scottish soil. In April of 1999, Megrahi and Fima flew from Tripoli to the Netherlands and were taken into custody. The trial opened in May of the year 2000 and lasted for months. The timer technicians took the stand. So did the agents who had traced the clothes and the programmer with the Frankfurt printout. And so did Tony Gauci, the shopkeeper from Malta, who testified that Megrahi resembled the man who bought the clothes. A double agent for the CIA also testified, a Libyan defector with the codename Puzzle Piece, who claimed to have seen the accused with a brown Samsonite suitcase at the airport in Malta. His credibility was so badly damaged under cross-examination that the judges themselves all but discarded him. On the 31st of January 2001, the verdict came. Fima, acquitted. Megrahi, guilty of 270 murders, life imprisonment. For the first time, a court had put a name and a face to the tragedy of Lockerbie. 2 years later, Libya formally accepted responsibility for the bombing and paid $2.7 billion to the families, around 10 million per victim. It was the price of returning to the international stage. The case seemed closed. Because among the victims' own relatives, there was a man who had spent years studying every document in the case, and he was convinced that in that courtroom, an innocent man had been convicted. Jim Swire is a British doctor. His daughter Flora died on Flight 103 the night before her 24th birthday. Swire attended every session of the trial at Camp Zeist, hoping to look his daughter's killer in the eye. When he heard the verdict, he fainted in the courtroom. Not from relief, from disbelief. He had reached the opposite conclusion to the judges. In his view, the evidence did not support the conviction, and he was not alone. Over the years, the cracks in the case widened. Gauci's identification was fragile. He had seen a photo of Megrahi in a magazine days before picking him out, and his descriptions of the customer shifted again and again. Later, something worse emerged. After the trial, the United States paid $2 million to Tony Gauci and $1 million to his brother under a rewards program. The Scottish Commission that reviews criminal cases concluded that hiding that information from the defense helped deny Megrahi a fair trial, and that there was no reasonable basis for placing the purchase of the clothes on the date that incriminated him. Nor was it ever proven how the suitcase was physically smuggled onto the plane in Malta. The luggage count on that flight added up. Swire and other relatives argued for an alternative theory. The bomb never came from Malta at all. It was placed directly at Heathrow, where, in the early hours of that morning, someone had forced a padlock in a luggage area. The shadow of the Popular Front and of Iran, the original lead, never fully went away. Meanwhile, Megrahi was diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer. In August of 2009, the Scottish government released him on compassionate grounds and allowed him to return to Libya, where a crowd welcomed him home like a hero. The image outraged half the world. He was given 3 months to live. He lived almost 3 more years, until May of 2012, proclaiming his innocence to the end. Before leaving, he had abandoned his second appeal, convinced it was the unspoken condition for being allowed to die at home. In 2020, a Scottish court reviewed the case at his family's request and upheld the conviction. In the eyes of the law, Megrahi remains guilty. In the eyes of some of the families, the question remains open. But the story did not end with his death. Because in 2011, Libya broke apart. Gaddafi fell and died at the hands of the rebels, and from the ruins of his regime, a name emerged that investigators had been chasing for decades without ever being able to touch him. The man who, according to the United States, built the bomb with his own hands. His name is Abu Aguila Massoud. Born in Tunisia, raised in Tripoli, an explosives technician for Libyan intelligence since the 1970s. His name had been in the case files from the very beginning, but always out of reach. After the fall of Gaddafi, Massoud ended up in a Libyan prison, and there, According to the American indictment, he confessed to an agent in 2012. He had built the Lockerbie bomb and had worked with Megrahi and FEMA to carry out the attack, on the orders of Libyan intelligence. On the 21st of December 2020, exactly 32 years after the bombing, the United States filed charges against him. 2 years later, in December of 2022, a Libyan militia handed him over, and Massoud appeared before a federal court in Washington. An old man in his 70s, limping, wearing headphones to follow the hearing in Arabic. He pleaded not guilty. To try him, the machinery of the case was set in motion once again, on an extraordinary scale. In December of 2024, entire sections of the fuselage of the Clipper made of the seas, stored for decades in the United Kingdom, crossed the Atlantic under FBI custody to serve as evidence. The case file holds more than 400,000 documents. The trial was set for 2025. It was postponed to April of 2026 because of the defendant's health and the sheer mountain of evidence. Then it was postponed again. 37 years after that night, the families are still taking their seats in courtrooms, waiting. In Lockerbie, meanwhile, life went on. Sherwood Crescent was rebuilt, the crater was filled in. Today, anyone passing through sees only low houses, a modest memorial, and mown grass. 5 kilometers away, beside the church of Tundergarth, the field where the nose of the plane came down is just a field again, with sheep grazing where the saddest photograph of the 1980s once stood. And in Drifesdale Cemetery, on the edge of town, there is a stone wall with 270 names. The 35 students from Syracuse, Captain Macquarie and his crew, Flora Swire, who was about to turn 24, the Somerville family from number 15. Every 21st of December, at 3 minutes past 7 in the evening, the exact hour the sky came down, someone stops in front of that wall and stands in silence. The Clipper made of the seas never reached New York, but in a hangar in the United States, its remains are still waiting for their final mission, to enter a courtroom and tell, at last, the whole truth of those 38 minutes.